We also did a flight over the Jordanian airfields. We saw Spitfires on the ground, and we reported to Army headquarters. At that stage, Israel did not have a single combat aircraft, nor a single anti-aircraft gun. The country was totally exposed. The Royal Egyptian Air Force started bombing Tel Aviv at first light on the 15th of May. And they were able to bomb and strafe Tel Aviv with impunity. By luck, one of the Spitfires doing a low-level attack on Sder Dov was shot down by a Machalnik who was manning a machine gun. He got a lucky shot in the aircraft's glycol line, and the aircraft crashed on the beach at Herzliya. We used spare parts from that aircraft later on, together with other aircraft, parts of other aircraft, to build Israel's first 2 Spitfires. The mechanics, most of them were Machalniks, but there were some Israelis who had been mechanics in the Royal Air Force, excellent mechanics, and they reconstructed 2 Spitfires from the scrap which was left by the Royal Air Force and this Egyptian aircraft that was shot down. Now the Air Force was really composed of 2 branches, you might say. There was the IAF, the Israel Air Force, and there was what was known as Air Transport Command, ATC. Air Transport Command was made possible by an American Machalnik by the name of Al Schwimmer, who, in my opinion, saved the State of Israel. Al Schwimmer and his colleagues smuggled out of the United States 11 C-46 heavy transport aircraft, 3 Constellations, 2 C-54 large aircraft, and 4 B-17s. And 4 B-17s. Unfortunately, one of the B-17s was impounded by the Portuguese in the Azores Islands under tremendous pressure from Britain. Qualified and experienced air crews were flowing into Israel, and perhaps, I can just mention here that in toto there were 4,800 Machalniks who came from 58 countries. We have a database which has the names of all the Machalniks and the countries from which they came and the units in which they served. The total number of Machalniks who were aircrew, pilots, navigators, bombardiers, flight engineers, air gunners, radio operators, we were 426 aircrew, not all at the same time. We came in the early days, and some of them came towards the end of the war. But a number of 426 aircrews served in the Air Force, and interestingly, 92 of the aircrew were non-Jews. 21.6% of the aircrews were non-Jews. The big problem was the lack of combat aircraft. The first combat aircraft that the Air Force acquired were 25 Avia S-199s, which we used to refer to as Messerschmitts. The Avia S-199 was a Czechoslovakian-made version of the Messerschmitt, but it was very, very much inferior to the famous Me-109 in World War II. Nevertheless, that aircraft, with all its problems, did a great job. And here we have one of the ironies of history, that Jewish pilots who were fighting against the Messerschmitt in World War II were now flying the Messerschmitt against our Arab enemies. In fact, the first 4 Messerschmitts which became operational stopped the Egyptian army at Ashdod, Isdud, as it was known in those days. About 10,000 Egyptians had penetrated Israel, had overrun the kibbutzim in the south, which were cut off, and they were really on their way to Tel Aviv. And 4 Messerschmitts, which were led by a Machalnik, a Lou Leonard, but 2 Israelis participated in that first operation, Modi Alon Zal and Asa Weizmann Zal. One of the pilots, a South African, he was shot down and killed, and 2 of the other aircraft were destroyed. It was a loss to the Israeli Air Force, but the first operation was really a success. The first operation with the Messerschmitts. The day after the attack on the Egyptians, I must tell you a rather humorous story. Asa Weizmann and a Machalnik, I'll think of his name in a minute, were on patrol, and they attacked an Iraqi column that had penetrated from the east. The American pilot's aircraft was badly damaged. He realized he couldn't get back to his base. He didn't want to bail out over Israel in case the aircraft crashed on a moshav or a kibbutz or a town. So he flew out to sea, and as he got to the coast, he bailed out. When he landed, he saw a number of kibbutzim with rifles and their agricultural implements came running towards him. No Israeli knew that the Air Force had got the first combat aircraft. He reasoned that they would assume, and the Egyptians had been bombing Tel Aviv day after day, he assumed that they would consider him an enemy pilot and would possibly kill him. So he had the presence of mind. He ran towards these guys with his hands in the air. He didn't know a word of Hebrew, and he kept shouting, "Shabbos gefilte fish, Shabbos gefilte fish." And those 4 words may have saved his life.